And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ango Show. My name is Ango, and I'm joined by Billy today. It is March 10th, 2025. Just a couple quick notes. First and foremost, holy shit, all these technical issues. I don't know what is happening. A lot of things aren't working. Twitter is not working. The streaming software wasn't working.
Nothing was
working. So that was a pretty unexpected, shitty situation. But nonetheless, we got to get to our second quick note. Ladies and gentlemen, happy birthday to Billy TKO. My God. Shout out to Billy for joining us. He is working on his birthday. He is also live simulcasting. So if you guys want to show him a little bit of love, go ahead and do so. If you guys want to support the show, you could drop a super chat on my channel. You could drop a super chat on Billy's channel. It's highly encouraged. And then, of course, this guarantees that your questions and comments get read. So, of course, that's always going to be a good time here on the channel. It always drives the conversation further. Billy, happy freaking birthday, dude.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
Hopefully you had a great weekend.
I did. I had a very, very I had a fun one.
You had a fun one, which basically I think you guys all know what that means.
I'm seeing everybody happy birthday. Somebody said, Darth said condolences on getting older, Billy. Thank you, man.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
I can feel it in my back.
Oh, God. Isn't it crazy? You just wake up the next day and you're like, I'm old.
Yeah, that's really what just happened. I just got older.
Yeah. It's just crazy how it changes in 24 hours, right?
Man, overnight, my back I had a little spasm.
Yeah. That's so funny. Billy, what an eventful weekend, right? We had SmackDown, and then we had Collision, and then obviously we had AEW Revolution.
This is right.
And obviously, you know, the big talking point today is going to be AEW Revolution. I did buy it. I did watch it. Yep. I told everybody during the prediction show what I was expecting, what I was excited for. There were some other things that happened on the show that was really good, though, that I liked. There was some things outright on the show that I disliked, and I'm sure you kind of feel the same way, so I want to talk about it.
I do, for sure.
But before we talk about AEW Revolution, just a quick note. I want to talk about something on SmackDown.
Yeah, we can talk.
It's the one thing I want to talk about on SmackDown because it was the one thing that was absolutely necessary. But WWE in the same week, in 1 week, had 3 title changes.
Yes.
So obviously we saw that with Io Sky. Then we saw with the North American Championship on NXT. And then on Friday Night SmackDown, we saw LA Knight win the U.S. title back from Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yes.
I put out a tweet over the weekend. I know X is kind of being problematic today, so we actually aren't even live on X. We are live on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok because of X being down. So I can't pull up the tweet directly, but kind of like to paraphrase it, I said the Shinsuke Nakamura U.S. title run was not good. Basically, WWE had to pivot. Yeah. That's what we saw. What was your reaction to that?
Okay, here's the thing. Obviously, we all wanted Shinsuke to have a much better run than he did.
Yeah.
I think especially with the character change and stuff like that, and kind of WWE did the best that they could for us to take him seriously. And I think there was a problem with the booking that just he was not booked correctly. It felt off. It was hard to take him serious.
Yeah.
And especially not having him on TV and whatnot and leaving him off. I think overall the title best suits somebody like LA Knight right now to hopefully get it back on track and where it needs to go. I'm glad that WWE chose to listen to us.
Yeah.
In this regard, they listened to us. They heard us complaining, or they heard us maybe not even so much complaining, but more about being upset about it.
Yeah.
And noticed that, pulled the trigger, and did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was necessary. I think a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people understand, like, even with Shinsuke Nakamura, I love the guy. I have a lot of respect for the guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think maybe WWE was trying to respect him and give him something to, because he is one of Triple H's guys at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And I think with Shinsuke, it's like, it's kind of known that it kind of feels like he's at the end of his career, sort of. Yeah. Like he doesn't really have too much to offer these days. Right. And, I hate being the kind of guy that, like, I don't want to be that content creator that's like, oh, well, he sucks. But I think when you look at booking, there's a challenge when Shinsuke First of all, he's not a strong promo, obviously. Right. And it's cool because they do the video packages and the vignettes and stuff, which are all really cool.
And they even did the video package before the match.
Yeah. The problem is, though, when you have somebody that's a champion like LA Knight could sell the belt with his promos, and LA Knight isn't the greatest in-ring worker, but he's good enough to get it done. Right. I think Shinsuke Nakamura kind of poses a little bit of an issue with that because he's not a strong promo. He's got the presentation and the cool vignettes and stuff, but then it's like, okay, can he really carry a feud in 2025? And unfortunately, with the way WWE operates, especially when you look at that division, it's like Carmelo Hayes is a great talker. Okay, you're going to bring in Aleister Black, great talker. LA Knight, great talker. Yep. But what do those guys all have in common? They can all wrestle really well. And I don't think Shinsuke Nakamura, it's not like he's bad, but I just don't think people are as invested. And then because they're not as invested, WWE has a harder time booking him. Yeah. And I think that's why they had to pivot. Now, what's interesting, though, is that was a blunder that WWE had on SmackDown. They fixed it. Now they got to create a great challenger to go up against LA Knight.
Right.
And obviously I'm under the belief that is going to be Aleister Black. Yeah. And then there's rumors that Rey Fenix might be going to SmackDown as a singles competitor.
Yeah. Didn't they say after the I've seen a rumor on Twitter, of course, that it could be after their Europe tour.
Yeah.
They could be that soon.
Yeah. So that would be really good because now you have,
because more that you still have a couple weeks in April.
Yeah, of course.
WrestleMania, which is kind of cool. So they get a little bit of extra time to build.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was my takeaway from SmackDown. I thought SmackDown was a lot better. Obviously the Naomi, Bianca and Jade thing is becoming a great thing. Yeah. Obviously there's been a lot of weird stuff too, that a lot of people aren't talking about. So I do want to mention this before we move on to AEW. The Jade Cargill situation, obviously I mentioned in a news video, there was a report that came out that she was never injured. There was backstage issues between her and Shayna, and it led to a whole bunch of issues with Jade and people on the main roster.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I had already covered it before the weekend. But then PW Insider came out and they're like, guys, like there wasn't an injury like this. Like you guys are starting to see what is happening. So I don't know the situation with Jade. I don't think people really came to blows backstage, but there were some issues backstage. I don't know. It led to a couple different WWE stars tweeting, and obviously Chelsea Green tweeted. And like now it's kind of like up in the air with like the IWC and Jade. A lot of people feel like Jade is using WWE as a platform to grow her personal brand and go Hollywood and stuff, which you never know, obviously. But I thought that segment was really well done. And then my last takeaway from SmackDown was Alba Fire repackaged and joining Chelsea Green, which
tough.
Thank God, because I love Chelsea Green and I love Alba Fire, and I was worried that Alba Fire was going to be doing nothing after Isla Dawn got released. So not a bad SmackDown, but those were my three takeaways. I thought Cody's promo was good. SmackDown is getting better. It's not perfect, but it is getting better.
It is.
It's a lot easier to watch.
WrestleMania season, they're working on things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think with storylines playing out, us knowing like, okay, Cody's storyline is on SmackDown, so you got to pay attention to some regard over there. I think that leads to make SmackDown a little bit better. Yeah. And it's kind of forcing the hand to make it better.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah. And then obviously we have Raw tonight, which I'm super excited about because Raw tonight should be a banger. And obviously we'll be live tomorrow to talk about Raw tonight. We will switch gears in just a little bit for AEW Revolution. We just got a couple super chats to get through. Yep. And I think everybody should tune in to what we have to say about Revolution because this is going to get good.
Yes.
Phil kicking things off with a $9.99 super chat. When I saw Shinsuke win the U.S. title at Survivor Series, I was looking forward to it with the new presentation, but with them having to give the title to him so early with the new gimmick, it flopped. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think booking Shinsuke was rather difficult. Yeah. To be honest, like I hate saying this. This is gonna. I don't, because the thing is, I love Shinsuke Nakamura, and I love Shinsuke Nakamura before he joined WWE.
Yes,
Shinsuke in NXT was so great. Shinsuke, even when he first came into the main roster, like I was cool with it. They did some cool stuff with Shinsuke. I just feel like we're at the tail end of his career, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of the way I perceive it. And I'm never going to advocate for somebody to get released or anything like that, but I don't know if I see Shinsuke Nakamura with WWE as an active in-ring performer. I don't know if I see it long term. Yeah. I think maybe they'll do some stuff with Shinsuke as being involved behind the scenes or ambassador role or something like that. I could definitely see that, but I just think Shinsuke's title reign, honestly, was not good. I think the new gimmick was cool and the new presentation was cool. I was all about it. I just think he just wasn't a strong champion. And there's people in WWE history that just aren't strong champions.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. And sadly, I get it. Like everybody, when you think of Shinsuke Nakamura, you think of like legendary, right? Like that guy was such a big deal. And especially when he came to WWE overall, he was such a massive deal. But here's the thing is like, we're all aware not everything can be done perfectly. You know what I mean? And this just so happened to be one of those circumstances where sadly things weren't done perfectly. They did a great job with the presentation, like you said a second ago. Overall, it's just hard to get them over right now. You have to think you have a stacked roster, right? Not everything can be done to perfection. And that's just the truth of the matter. And this is, when we lead into AEW and stuff like that, like my gripe isn't with AEW on that. It's just about how you go about doing it. I get it. Not everything can be perfect, but at least try. You know what I mean?
And one thing I was going to say too, and I think this is probably the big thing that a lot of people don't talk about, but I think WWE, there's a misconception that WWE doesn't care about wrestling. But then you go and watch Raw and you see the mid-card matches are all bangers. And then you watch SmackDown and you see Andrade and Carmelo Hayes having bangers, right? Yep. And then I think like one of the issues is like Shinsuke Nakamura isn't having those bangers as a champion. So like even his match with LA Knight, I know some people really liked it, but to me, I kind of felt like it was underwhelming. And that's an issue, right? So WWE has kind of conditioned people like these champions are great in-ring performers. And then you watch Shinsuke and then you're like, okay, well, you can't get invested too much. It's difficult. It's a very difficult task. And like I said, it's nothing against Shinsuke, but I think that's kind of the reason for why WWE had a hard time executing. I think partially it's on WWE's fault. And then I think partially it's his fault.
Yeah, for sure.
And listen, like, who knows who's going to be the next U.S. champion? But my final thought with that would be, like, you have Aleister Black coming in, maybe Miro's coming in, Rey Fenix might be coming in, and then you got to look at, like, okay, you have Carmelo Hayes, you have Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu is a very big possibility. Like, there's a lot of great potential champions for that title. All will be better than Shinsuke naturally, which is kind of like I think people kind of know that, right? And they're kind of anticipating that and waiting for that. So that definitely had a lot to do with it.
For sure.
Shout out to Phil for the super chat. Toledo Channel dropping 100 rupees. He says, when Taker won against Cena at WrestleMania 40, Taker's daughter told him she's sad because Cena lost. Every child is sad. Randy's kid, Cody's kid, Sammy's kid, R-Truth. Yeah, we'll see what happens, man. Yeah. Obviously, Randy Orton had some things to say, and the John Cena heel turn. After the John Cena heel turn, I feel like WWE is executing it.
Everybody's talking about it. Even Randy kicking off his promo, starting with Cena,
which was nice because that's kind of what Punk did on Raw. So it's like
the same type of kickoff.
It's the right approach, letting people know that they are very much,
it's serious.
Yeah. The John Cena heel turn's a big deal, obviously. Yeah. And I like the fact that even without John Cena being on TV, they've continued to make it a big deal, which is going to be really interesting to see John Cena's first appearance on Raw when he shows up.
Well, next week's going to be fun, too.
Yeah, and that's going to be next week, Monday.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about that. Shout out to Toledo Channel for the super chat. Guys, I think it's time to talk about AEW Revolution.
Yeah, come on, man. Let's talk about it.
And obviously, people think I'm just going to shit on it. And for those people, you're absolutely right. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I told everybody I was buying Revolution. I said there was 3 matches specifically that is getting me to pay $50. So we're obviously going to talk about that. Whatever questions, comments you guys have, drop those super chats. Let's see what you guys think about Revolution. Billy, before we break down different matches, different things we liked, different possible scenarios and things of that nature, I really just want to get your opinion on what you genuinely thought of the pay-per-view as a whole. As somebody who had to pay $50 to watch this pay-per-view, what was your experience? Did you enjoy it? Do you think it was good, bad, overwhelming, underwhelming, whatever it may be?
So I actually thought the pay-per-view as a whole was great.
Yeah.
I thought AEW did a much better job pacing out the show, letting some spots and things breathe. It didn't feel like I was forced to watch 4 hours of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
My gripe, though, the 0 hour.
Yeah.
I feel like they're doing a little bit too much on the 0 hour. I talked about it in my video today. The 0 hour just feels like a little bit too much. You have Ring of Honor guys showing up on the 0 hour. You're putting 3 or 4 matches on there, whatever the case is, when technically all you need is one. As I said in my video, there only needs your 0 hour should be kind of what WWE does with their kickoff. Again, not comparing, but just if you want to have one match on there, fine. I'm not opposed to that. You know what I mean? If you want Big AJ and Justice to come out there and you don't want to put them on the main card, but you want them to be on the show, sure, this is a great opportunity to do so. But seeing like Blake Christian out there, like I'm sorry, I don't care. I just don't. So my gripe would be the 0 hour. Overall, though, the pay-per-view itself, big fan.
You know, it's funny because you brought up 0 hour. Yeah. And I know this is going to be the thing that like, give me a second. I think my computer just froze.
Uh-oh. You're not frozen, though.
I'm not frozen?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, we are good.
Yeah.
That's good.
You're not frozen.
So I feel like the one thing that's really bothered me about 0 hour in particular is 2 things. One, I see Adam Cole on it, right? Yes. And I see what they've done there. And then I kind of think a little bit about this, they have these matches and it kind of feels like it's pushing ROH a little bit, more of those ROH guys. Yeah. So it's kind of a bridge to push the ROH brand. That's been my biggest thing. But really, I think what we need to do is have a conversation about Adam Cole, because I thought AEW Revolution was great. And I thought, honestly, for like, as I've said before, like there was only a few things I was excited about with the pay-per-view. And I've always been adamant about this in the last 6 years. AEW television could be shitty TV, but Tony Khan as a matchmaker knows, at least on pay-per-views, you are going to get your money's worth. Yep. I've said that. There's never been a time where I've never said it. I've been very adamant. That's a very, very consistent take. Yep. However, it feels like Adam Cole being on 0 hour is a step down.
For sure. Like, after main eventing All In?
After watching what this guy has done in WWE NXT and some of the great things that he's done on AEW television, I cannot fathom the idea of Adam Cole being on 0 hour.
I can't fathom the fact that Daniel Garcia is on 0 hour. He's your TNT champion. What are you doing? What is your achievement there? I mean, you got him out there, you got him dancing and all this and that. And granted, I get it. They were trying to tell the story between Garcia and Adam Cole, and, Garcia getting the tap, while looking at Adam Cole and trying to sell that story. Overall, I can't get over the fact that they're not on the main card fighting for the title.
It doesn't make sense to me to see Adam Cole and these guys on the pre-show. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like it doesn't.
It doesn't make sense. I genuinely feel like 0 hour, like you kind of brought it up earlier too, where it's like taking a page out of WWE's notebook. Like, I don't think they have to do that, right? Like, in my personal opinion, and this is where I get kind of annoyed, honestly, with AEW, it's like you're going to do these matches on the pre-show, and then you have matches where it's like lower card guys, and I don't know. Like, to me, I just feel like that is so problematic. And then you have a guy that main evented All In. Then you have a guy like Adam Cole in the Undisputed Era were so freaking cool back in NXT, bro. They had the aura. They had everything that, like,
dude, it was such a cool faction. They were so fun to watch.
And then I don't know, like, to me, I just feel like it's been a total blunder.
Well, because of all the mistakes that have happened with it in AEW.
But it's not, we're talking about a guy that, even with those booking mistakes, we're talking about a guy who was viewed as a future world champion. Mm-hmm. Like, we are talking about a guy who is not even involved in the world championship picture. And I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is a Tony Khan thing. I don't know how to explain this other than the simple fact that AEW has really dropped the ball on Adam Cole. Yeah. And it's not just, oh, he's on 0 hour and that's what it is. Tomorrow they can give him the TNT championship. It doesn't change the fact that, to me, Adam Cole, casual fans, IWC, hardcore fans, I feel like everybody has kind of been under the assumption that this guy is a top guy. And for some reason, it's not viewed that way in AEW. Oh. And it's like, it's crazy
but it was at one point. And I think that's the kicker.
Okay, so explain to me then what changed. Is it the injury?
I definitely think the injury played a huge part.
But plenty of guys got injured in AEW and they've come back and they've been fine.
Explain. I mean,
there's been plenty of people. Adam Cole has been injured, but he's still over.
And you have to think of all the shit that got too. Like during the injury and when he brought out the Undisputed Kingdom and like how that was portrayed and how long that took and the before, I'll tell you guys like this, before the Death Riders, there was the Undisputed Kingdom.
And that was a blunder. They went from one blunder to another.
Yes, exactly. So the blender, I think, is what's probably put, because, okay, they got away from the Undisputed Kingdom. Not necessarily got away from it, but it's not the big thing on the card. Adam Cole just so happens to still be attached to what that is and what is happening. So therefore, I don't know how they do it or how they go about it. But again, you can make the same conversation with the Death Rider storyline that Adam Cole needs to get away from that shit. I get it. I love Kyle O'Reilly. I love Roderick Strong, but Wardlow's not been on TV for God knows how long. And he was such a big selling point of what that storyline originally was.
Yeah.
And he was going to be the muscle technically behind Adam Cole, which would, in hindsight, would have worked. That would have worked if you think about it. But again, it's just fallen to the wayside. It's a storyline that it took too long. You took way too long for the Adam Cole and the MJF thing. So I think Adam Cole is just another example of right now, they're trying to throw shit at the wall and it's not working.
So do you think there is still that Undisputed Kingdom like stink from the Devil storyline? You think that is, but I don't feel that way with the crowd. I feel like when the crowd sees Adam Cole, it doesn't feel that way.
I don't think it's an Adam Cole thing. And I think that's kind of where we're getting misconstrued here. It's not an Adam Cole thing. It's not Adam Cole's fault that shit was stinky. It's Tony Khan's fault that it was stinky. But overall, Adam Cole is still attached to that. I could love Adam Cole, but I could hate what he's doing. And I'll still cheer Adam Cole every time he comes out into the ring because I'm just an Adam Cole fan. But you still have him attached to this name. So now they got him doing shit with Daniel Garcia, and now Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong are supposed to be the muscle of this when Kyle O'Reilly didn't even play a factor into that storyline in the first place.
No, and I think that's one of the big things. Like when Wardlow comes back, I know Wardlow was reportedly backstage at Revolution and he was injured and stuff. But I feel like I'm wondering if this is all kind of like, hey, we're going to see what happens in the meantime, and then just go back to that story. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like Tony Khan does do that sometimes. I just don't know what the hell it is because I feel like Adam Cole, since the minute he's been in AEW, has largely been underwhelming. It has been more underwhelming. And just, I feel very bad because, this is where people are going to think of me being like this AEW grifter thing and pro WWE thing. Yeah. But when Adam Cole was running hot in NXT, it was at a time where I really hated NXT.
Yeah, but the thing, 2020.
Yeah, like the thing is, like, I really hated NXT when he was there, like before he left, and I really did not like NXT. And what made that really insane was the one thing I did like was Adam Cole. And I actually loved the Adam Cole Kyle O'Reilly feud, and then it was funny because Adam Cole had left, Kyle O'Reilly stuck around and did some single stuff, and that clearly didn't work.
2.0, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, though, you got to remember when Kyle O'Reilly left NXT and then went to AEW, I was ecstatic. I'm like, okay, this is great, bro. Like, we're about to have the one thing that I liked about NXT. At least I'll get that on AEW, you know? Yep. And I just feel like ever since he came to AEW, it hasn't worked out. And I don't know, like, I feel like even the IWC is kind of turning on Adam Cole. And I don't know if that's a result of them just, the IW.
I think it's a stink, dude.
But here's the thing. The IWC has a tendency to hate on everything when people are like, IWC hates on people who hate on something. So it's like, okay, well, we're kind of hating the direction of where they've gone with Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and obviously Roderick Strong. So is it because it's no longer the popular opinion that they kind of join in and say, well, yeah, they're just not that good anyways, right? Because I see that narrative. Or is this just a direct result of Tony Khan and AEW have not known how to book him correctly? Because even before Undisputed Kingdom, you can make the argument that Adam Cole never really got to where he should be based on where he was before. And then you saw the Undisputed Kingdom storyline with the devil and everything, and that basically just became outright garbage. And what's crazy is I remember us talking about in live streams, I was all for the storyline.
The devil storyline?
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
it's huge.
It was good stuff. And then it became a big blunder. And I hate to say this because I know some people just aren't going to genuinely like this, but you got to remember at one point, Billy, the Death Rider storyline started off hot and it cooled down fast.
Yeah.
So we are seeing AEW has a hard time sometimes with these two big storylines. And it's not hatred, but I do think the result of that is the fans kind of turning on it and being like, okay, well, what's going on? This is where the narrative starts coming out. Hey, man, like these guys aren't being utilized correctly. And by the way, if people don't get it, if you don't think it's going to happen with Adam Cole long term, if they don't figure it out, look at what's going to happen with Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley is already losing people's support on the internet because of the Death Rider storyline.
Understand that Jon Moxley is a fan favorite all across the board. Whether you like AEW, whether you don't, Jon Moxley has always been a fan favorite. I've talked about it numerous times. Jon Moxley has been a very, very comfortable person for AEW to run back to when things kind of go wrong.
Yes.
Go south.
Yep.
Oh, the fact that he's losing support is a little scary because that is the guy who's like been there since day one. Legit.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird for me because I was like, okay, press the reset button. Jon Moxley holds it down. Perfect guy. And then Death Rider storyline starts. I'm like, oh, I like this. This is really good. And then just very quickly it falls apart. And so my last thought on this too, that I just really want to make was when I was watching 0 Hour and I saw Adam Cole on there, I just kept thinking to myself, there is something better for him. This cannot be what it is. And I'm sorry, but there's no reason why this should be on 0 Hour. And I also want to preface this one thing because we mentioned Jon Moxley and Adam Cole. They didn't have this issue with Tony Storm and they don't have this issue with Swerve Strickland. So it's not a 100%, oh, AEW sucks, AEW bad. No. But it is a concern that AEW has a harder time figuring it out with people who were designed to be stars, who were stars before. And then it's weird because some people like Tony Storm and Swerve Strickland weren't given that opportunity. No. And AEW figured out a way to get them over and give them that opportunity. Right. So to me, it's just like a big mind fuck because I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just really crazy to be honest. The show, there was a lot of things I liked about the show, and obviously we will get to that. There were a couple super chats, I believe. So Toledo Channel dropped 200 rupees. He says AEW Revolution. What is going on with my computer? Okay, are we good? Can you still see me?
Yeah,
can you still hear me?
We can see you the whole time.
Perfect. Okay. AEW Revolution was a good cake with a bad icing main event. When Storm was asked about storytelling in a press conference, she's told, go watch fucking cinema. That thing's come full circle.
So can I go for a second?
No, you can't. Yeah, of course.
Here's the thing, right? You said AEW Revolution was a good cake with bad icing and then parenthesizing the main event. This is what I will always say, and you guys have to understand. I just started getting back into AEW. I've been going live on Wednesdays and stuff like that, talking about it, because I do feel that the show overall, in like hindsight, is good. Like some things make sense. Is the storytelling for everybody? No. but most things make sense. Here's the thing, is that the bad will always outweigh the good. We go on stream for hours at a time. Ango gets, dragged through the mud on Twitter over certain clips. The bad things that are said will always outweigh the good in these situations. And again, we are no exception to that. We will take the bad and say, oh yeah, that shit was bad, rather than focusing on the actual good of the show. Because again, overall, the show was good. It's just that bad, when it's really bad, that shit stinks. So that's my thought process there.
Yeah. One thing I will say, I like this super chat because I do think it's a good cake with bad icing, because I feel like the show was relatively well paced. I do agree with that. Mm-hmm. I do think there's some opportunities to let more things breathe on the show, where AEW is not as good with that versus WWE. I think TNA and AEW and some of these other companies kind of struggle with that, where WWE will and I know people get pissed about the video packages and stuff, but sometimes you get some really cool stuff and then you're just kind of like jumping into the next thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want people to digest, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that could be worked on. But I thought every match, there was 2 matches that genuinely I was like, I don't give a shit. And I'll tell you guys which matches those were. There was only 2. There was only 2 matches on the main card where I was like, I really don't give a shit. And I felt like they did it. I felt like it was just like whatever. Yeah. However, what I will say though, the truth is, if you give, for example, Tony Storm and Mariah May, a storyline that I no longer cared about because of Grand Slam.
Yep.
You at least delivered me something really good here.
God, yeah. I mean,
I wasn't excited. I wasn't excited for it, but good job, because you got me excited for it as I watched it. Right.
And the fact that they're now like, all right, this is the end. This is it.
Yes.
This is how we finish it. Cool. Count me in. That's a hell of a way to end it.
Yes. Okay. It wasn't the thing that got me excited for the pay-per-view. It wasn't the thing I was looking forward to, but you delivered something to me that I was like, okay, this is really good. Yes. And I appreciate that. Yeah. So for sure, I understand that. Right. But I do think the one thing that people need to understand about AEW pay-per-views, some people are going to like the fact that it's just match after match after match after match. However, I do think one necessary thing that needs to be said is, on a card where this has been AEW's problem since very day one. Day one, I've said this since day one. Great, you just gave me all these great matches on one card. Nothing wrong with that. However, you got to remember, something has to stand out from your pay-per-view. And so when you look at yesterday's pay-per-view, the thing that really stood out to people had nothing to do with those great matches. It has to do with the bad main event.
Right, exactly.
That's been a bad thing. That's been since AEW day one. So that's just one thing. Like, you gave me a great pay-per-view, sure, but the great matches aren't the talking point right now, right? The talking point is, well, Christian Cage failed his cash in. John Moxley, Death Riders are still going, and obviously we'll dissect that in a little bit.
People who watched, they knew that it was a good show overall.
Yeah, of course. But the talking point isn't the good matches. It's the bad thing. And it's weird because I kind of went viral and I kind of pissed off a lot of people because the AEW sickos didn't like the fact that AJ Styles said it's about the moment, not the matches, right? And it's a little bit about both, but really, I'm paraphrasing. I posted the clip, it got like 200,000 views, and there's a lot of people that are like, you're just grifting. Well, talk to me, tell me. Nobody does this. You get pissed, but nobody does this. Tell me how it's wrong. Tell me how AJ Styles, a professional of over 20 years, understands something, and then wrestling fans who've never taken a bump, like, no, dude. There's things where if you look at Revolution, it's a fantastic pay-per-view, but your main event being a letdown is the talking point. And I think once that becomes the talking point, those good matches don't matter. And that's the problem. Mm-hmm. And that's why I do agree with that. It's good cake with bad icing. Okay. And shout out to Tolino Channel for that super chat.
Shout out to Tolino.
Phil dropping $9.99. Daniel Garcia is a part of Rent a Trio every single time he wrestles, and he's the TNT champ. Not only him, but Adam Cole main evented All In, and we know he has the talent, but his downfall is crazy. It's strange, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that, I mean, it's hard because here's the thing, Phil. I hear where you're coming from. It's just it's hard to think that the downfall is all that crazy because of the situation that he's in. I mean, we're kind of witnessing it, but I don't think that he's fallen off so badly that it's like we can't get him back on track. You've seen what they did with MJF and Daniel Garcia. That was good shit. What got him to this point was very, very good shit. The problem is that after they didn't know what to do. Again, this is the point of AEW and what we say all the time. It's they do so good at some things and refuse to follow up, and then people get lost in the shuffle from following up. That's always been the problem with AEW. It's been a problem since we were talking about it when it was in its glory days.
Yeah.
It's still just, here's the thing. AEW is not all that fucking bad. There are just things that are done horribly that make it bad. This is one of those situations. Why is your TNT champion in a fucking trio? Why is your TNT champion on the pre-show? It blows my mind.
Yeah, and I think one thing that really has to be said here, because everybody loves the grifting take, you know, but like if AEW just like if they just kind of focused on building feuds the way they did with Hangman and Kenny, the way they did it with MJF and Punk, the way they did it between MJF and Wardlow, the way they did it with Tony Storm and Mariah May, the way they did it with Swerve and Hangman. If the smaller feuds got that kind of love, which, by the way, I told you I don't really give a shit about Ricochet versus Swerve, but I never said anything bad about their storyline. I'm not invested in it, personally speaking, but at least there's layers to it. So why is that stuff happening to crown a number one contender for the world championship, but you can't do it for your TNT champion or your TBS champion, right? Or, you know, and like, that's the thing. And excuse me, the one thing that's not going to be said here, but we are going to say it, I'm going to bring this conversation to light because there are some really good stories that happen in this company, but consistency is the key. And Daniel Garcia, it was such a beautiful thing when he won the TNT championship. And now they found a way for me to not give a shit about Daniel Garcia.
And that sucks.
And this is the guy that's like one of my favorites, you know? Yeah. And so the thing is, I look at Tony Khan's vision for AEW and I see partially the vision, but then I don't see the full vision, and it's hard to see the full vision because you're not displaying that. That's not being put on display. And I think for me to call that out, it becomes, well, you're a grifter, you're this, you're that. Well, dude, if that pisses you off so much that I'm pointing it out, it should piss you off even more because all I want is for it to be good.
Yeah, right.
I don't know why. Like, oh, Ango, you're JD Jr., buddy. I was sitting there talking about how Hangman and Kenny was my fucking favorite storyline because it was so good. I was eating that shit up. I loved CM Punk versus MJF, and I loved that build, and I loved how they let Punk go off on those promos, and I loved everything about Swerve and Hangman. That shit was fantastic. Tony Storm and Mariah May was a great storyline. However, why can't this be done across the board with some of the smaller guys? And you know, one thing really quick, Billy, it's like when Phil says not only did Adam Cole main event All In, and we all know he has a talent, but his downfall is crazy. The reason why his downfall is crazy because there is no long-term vision for him. So they have a long-term vision for some people and not for others. But we're talking about a guy who was once presented as a potential world championship guy in this company.
And the problem is it's very recent. It's not like it was 4 or 5 years ago that this happened. This is within the last 2 years where we were talking about this guy being a big deal on your show and being, you know, front and forward and center on how you were building your show, who you were surrounding it by. You know, I just think that AEW have to backtrack a little bit. You got to kind of turn the wheel a little bit to the left and go back to the drawing board. You have to get this together. You're not dead in the water. You know what I mean? It's not something that isn't fixable. You can fix these things. You know, we talk about it from the early 90s when WWE, the reason why the Attitude worked is because everything, and I mean everything, had a story up and down. And now we're looking at it in WWE where everything has somewhat of a good story. I'm not saying I think we can all agree that Raw is very good, maybe not on the SmackDown side.
Yeah.
But overall, all your stories, it should go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it should be all across the board. And everything should work. So it's really focusing and honing in on that storytelling, because here's the thing. I was talking last night to one of my buddies, and I was saying, AEW match wise always delivers. That's never an argument.
Yeah.
You have to figure out, are you just going, and I know we've talked about this for years, right? Are you only going to pick one audience to target, or are you going to try and target all different audiences? Because if you want to build your brand and make it successful and make things work, you need a piece of the pie for everybody. So everybody needs a piece. Yeah. So you can have great matches, but you also need good storytelling. Because I know, Ango, for instance, you watch pro wrestling based off of the storytelling. That's how you enjoy your pro wrestling. You're very honed in on the storytelling, right?
I think that's how I watch pretty much any TV show.
Exactly. Anything.
Yeah.
So, fair enough. For Ango to be invested in this show, Ango's not a shitty person because he's not invested. People could say all they want. Oh, he shits on him, blah, blah, blah. You can say that up and down, but really what it is no. They're just not giving him what he wants right now.
And it's so funny because I think and actually thank you, Phil, for the super chat. Brian McCaddy dropped a super chat, and I agree with this. He says Cole is over, has been over everywhere. ROH, WWE, AEW. Strong was over in ROH, but was just an accessory everywhere else. Same with O'Reilly. But the thing is, right? It's to me the story is what keeps me driven. Somebody in the chat, number one Peep says stories in wrestling is stupid. Well, the thing is, a storyline or a story in general doesn't necessarily have to be what's outside of the ring. It could be what's inside the ring, right? It could be a 15-minute match, but there is a story in play because no matter how you want to admit this or not, if you want to deny it, you can. But if you want one person to win over the other, there has to be a reason to convince you for that. There has to be a moment that convinces you otherwise, because if you want the heel to win, then there's a reason for that. If there's a baby face, you want the baby face to win for a reason. Right. There is a reason for that. So the thing to me is I see Adam Cole and I see this pay-per-view and I'm like, okay, well, Adam Cole's on the pre-show and Daniel Garcia's on the pre-show. Why couldn't we give them a really big feud? Not just something that we see for a couple, 2 weeks or so, but why couldn't we have built them a great feud? That way they could have had a singles match for Revolution. And then what could have actually been really cool was Adam Cole could have lost to Daniel Garcia, which would have made Adam Cole feel like, okay.
Gotten the Undisputed Kingdom involved.
Yeah, you could have done a million things. And then what would have been really dope, though, is the fact that you could have had Daniel Garcia get a relatively nice win, which would have been great at this time. But then you let them continue to feud for a little bit, and then you go full heel, Undisputed Kingdom, right? And that's how you beat Daniel Garcia, right? You could have done something to prompted some sort of change for Adam Cole. But the thing is, if you look at the show completely, even though I'm not invested in Ricochet's story and his character, and I think it's corny or whatever, the reason why I enjoyed watching Swerve and Ricochet was because there was layers and they did some good storytelling within the match. So not only is it a good match, but they built a story to get there. Maybe it's a story I'm not invested in. Maybe it's a story that I don't really think is good. Maybe I think Ricochet is corny. But when I see Swerve at the end of it, I'm like, okay, now I'm actually more excited for Swerve because this company does need to press the reset button in the world championship picture. Okay, well, I was happy when Swerve was champion. I was happy when Samoa Joe was champion. So if we're going to press the reset button, make me happy, right?
Yeah.
So Swerve winning is a thing. As I stated on the prediction show, though, it's kind of a problem for Ricochet to lose this match. He loses, right? Mm-hmm. So now you got to think AEW is in a tough spot, but you got to look at your priorities. And I do think for a big percentage of the show, They did relatively well, but there is an issue in AEW, just as there is in WWE. The problem is they actually have the same problem, but the problem is it doesn't happen on WWE's flagship show, and it doesn't happen on SmackDown in the main event scene or in the women's main event scene or, anywhere else. It's just there's one area on SmackDown where it's an issue, and with AEW, it's not based on the specific show. It's just based on consistency. Right. So, that's why, and that's why I think, for AEW fans, when they say, hey, I like really good wrestling matches, I love wrestling matches. Wrestling is the number one most important thing. Well, guess what? There was a time where I said the same thing. And all I asked for at the time was, hey, just make it logical. They had a ranking system. The wins and losses mattered. And then obviously AEW actually agreed with Ango, clearly, because they said, hey, this isn't going to work. And they turned their back on it. They weren't being consistent with it. They weren't being logical with it. Yep. And it was a very difficult task for Tony Khan and the company to do. So AEW said, we're going to go away from being sports presentation and we're going to be sports entertainment. That's the harsh reality, right? They did go away from the sports mentality. Yeah. Yes, it's the place where the best wrestle. But guess what? Everybody in this company wrestles really well. So now, how do you give a fuck about a good wrestler when everybody's a good wrestler? You just simply don't. You don't. You need something more enticing. And so therefore, how do you do that? By creating good stories. So if you look at Revolution, as I've said, Kanasuke and Kenny Omega, relatively good story.
For sure.
They should have. It's a good story. They dropped the ball with Kenny going after the Elite, but it was a good story between him and Kanasuke. And he wins the international championship belt, as I predicted. Yep. Clearly, all in, Okada versus Kenny, continental champion versus international champion, title versus title, unification bout, right? Mm-hmm. Gonna be great. Amazing.
If you notice, again, why storytelling is good. You want me to explain it in very, very easy terms?
Yeah.
It's something as simple as Kenny getting his gut busted on the table, knowing the story of Kenny's stomach.
With diverticulitis.
It's super simple.
Yeah.
It's shit like that. You tell me otherwise, for a fact that the reason why you were invested in that match was not only because of the story that they were telling outside of the ring, but also the things that they were doing in the ring. When you bring those two together, you get stuff that is amazing, like Kenny Omega winning the international championship.
Yeah, well, so in that match, though, they convinced me that maybe Kanasuke would win.
Yes, exactly.
So the thing is,
they do a good job at protecting him by letting it be the finish that it was.
Yes, exactly. So therefore, I'm like, I knew it was going to be a great match. I knew Kenny was going to win. I think it was very predictable with how they were going to go about it, but it was the story that got me there. And it was the story before the match happened and then also during the match. Yes. So we can't act like stories don't matter because people get invested based on that. It's not even so much. I kind of hate the term story because people think of a story like, it's got to be millions of layers because that's how WWE does it. No, but there has to be a little bit of a reason as to why it's happening in the first place, other than the fact that it's just two really good wrestlers, right?
Right.
So the thing to me is that there is a way for it to be done correctly. AEW has shown us that. They have shown us that. It's just they have to show it more consistently. And I thought the pay-per-view was really good. And there was areas where I was like I said, there was two matches. Mm-hmm. So obviously it's very clear. The two matches that I didn't care about on this pay-per-view was the tag team championship match, and it was the main event match. I didn't care about those at all. Mm-hmm. To me, I was like, I could skip them and not give a shit. Everything else ended up being banger, 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 banger. Why is Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher such a great match? Because there's a great story attached to it. There's a great history there. There's an incentive to know who these guys are. Do I think they made the right choice in the finish? No, I absolutely do not.
Yeah, I disagree.
But I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. I feel like they went about it the wrong way. But did it make me hate the match? No. Absolutely not.
You knew the story was good.
Because of how we got there. Can they do more after? That's their job. Will they do a good job? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, but I do know that they didn't give me the result that I was looking for. So therefore, the way I look at it is, well, I hope they figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
They have a chance to figure it out, and maybe they will.
Yeah, here's the thing is after Revolution, they kind of, besides one portion of the show, you kind of get a little bit of a reset with where things go on Wednesday. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You kind of get to start something new. And even low-key, the end of the show with Swerve standing tall does signal like, all right, we're trying to get away from this shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like to sit up and here's the thing. Yes, that main event, it was horrible. It sucked. It was shitty. It was poopy. But it did signal like, all right, we're not going to go fully away from the Death Rider storyline, but what we're going to do is we're going to target and again maybe go for something different. Now, the problem with that is that, hey, the Death Riders are still around and it's still a shitty storyline.
Yes, and we'll get to that. Shout out to Brian McHattie for the super chat. Rabbit dropped $5 USD. He says, crazy fact, but I don't think Adam Cole has won an AEW championship since he's got there. He's won the ROH championship, but not AEW championship. I think he's speaking about the fact that he was the ROH tag team champions. That was a bad time for AEW as well. I thought that was dumb, utilizing ROH belts on them.
They're still utilizing it in some degree.
To some degree, yeah, and I think that's a mistake.
No, and silly. Jericho being on an AEW TV show with the ROH belt kills me.
Yeah, I think that goes into the ROH TV deal stuff, which
I don't understand it. I'm not going to sit here and say I do. I don't.
I don't have faith in that anymore. I've heard little whispers of what it could be, where it could be, things like that, and we still haven't seen anything. So those whispers haven't amounted to anything yet. But what I will say is, like, it is astounding, and I know there's more super chats, and I know there's one that kind of ties into this thought. But really, what it comes down to is talent utilization, and I think that's always going to be a big thing that needs to be discussed. And it's obviously harder, but you got to look at who you're pushing, bro. You got to look at who you're pushing. John Moxley was the safe option to go back to for a championship.
As I said,
and then it starts off good, and then they drop the ball. So now, in turn, what they've actually effectively done was turn most of the people against Moxley.
Yeah.
And not like, hey, man, like, we hate you because your character is so good. It's like, bro, we hate you because you're at the top of the game and, like, you're not presenting the storyline well.
Exactly.
Thank you, Rabbit, for the super chat. David Primero dropping $4.99. He says, Adam Cole's popularity faded due to wrong booking with MJF, revealing himself to be the devil while injured. Britt Baker issue, injuries, and AEW signings. I don't know how the Britt Baker issue ties into it.
Britt Baker does absolutely nothing for Adam Cole and why this is happening.
Yeah,
I don't get too personal with that.
Yeah,
that does not affect anything.
I don't think so either.
No, if you're judging somebody based off personal shit in a wrestling company that's staged,
yeah,
I don't know, man. That's just funky to me.
Well, I think there is some truth though to David's super chat. I mean, like, he got injured and then they still revealed him as the devil. Then he couldn't compete, and then
all of that is true.
I think Tony Khan is very similar to Triple H in the sense of, like, when you do have a long-term story, you call an audible, but then you kind of go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is this wasn't working at all. Like, it wasn't working. The devil storyline. I know there was times I would talk about it on streams and people were like, how do you like this shit?
Well, I was so excited about it in the beginning.
Yeah, it's just like I was excited.
Good. So they were telling that shit, like, with the backstage beat ups and shit like that.
Yeah, it was
good. It was good stuff.
I remember when Taven and Bennett won the tag titles as the Masked Man.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I liked it. I mean, I obviously knew, like, kind of watch. I'm like, oh, it's them, right. But like, even before the reveal, I was like, I like this. 2 Masked Men won. And like, there was just certain things that were good. I don't even think Adam Cole's popularity faded. I think what happened is this. People are no longer bought into Adam Cole because AEW is no longer bought into Adam Cole.
Exactly.
The reason why people are bought into Tony Storm is because you can see that they're bought into Tony Storm. The reason why people are bought into Swerve is because you could see through effective booking.
It's all about how you're being booked.
Yeah, and it matters, dude. Perception is reality. So if you see Tony Khan, like, and actually the perfect example of this, people forget, but when Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho feuded in the early stages of AEW, I was not bought into Orange Cassidy. To me, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. And I can't remember, I can't remember all of it, but I remember I was like, man, I'm just not bought into it. It took a little bit of time. But because of the booking at the time, it got me bought into Orange Cassidy. Yep. And for a while, they got me bought in, and then I lost my interest again. So it's like I feel like AEW is really good at capturing your interest for a short period of time. Yep. And then eventually, with like once they finish their conclusion to whatever storyline it is, it's like, okay, we'll find something new now to do. And then they don't have
that they go to the new things.
Yes. And then in the meantime, when they go into those new things, they kind of forget about what they just successfully did prior. And I think that's one thing that like is a very, 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 very consistent take. But it's also the one thing that people don't want to admit because you're basically saying, well, AEW does pretty good, but then they drop the ball and people really take offense to that. But if you really look at it, that is the truth. And the perfect example is how I feel about Kyle Fletcher. There was a moment on these live streams where I'm like, Kyle Fletcher, Will Ospreay should be John Cena, Randy Orton for several years for AEW.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they've killed Kyle Fletcher, but my interest progressively gets worse with Kyle Fletcher because it is so clear to me that Tony Khan wants Will Ospreay to be like their number one guy. And that's one of the things that like,
see, I would disagree though in that regard because I think that after the match that they had last night, and even their matches beforehand, right, have always been very good. I don't think Kyle Fletcher here loses any momentum. I don't. I think now here's the thing. Can he lose momentum? Yes. But as long as you figure out a way to cover that loss up and make it make sense, because you have to understand that match was brutal all the way around. They beat the shit out of each other. And he looked really, really good in that loss, even at the end when he was yelling, cussing, all of that. He looked very strong. To me, he did, right? So my thought process is, hey, this guy, if you do this correctly, you can still have them go on and feud, even if it's like on the side, right? If it's some type of side thing later down the line, if you want to target it again, you keep them involved with each other.
Yeah. So what I would say is after this, Kyle Fletcher should put his sights on Daniel Garcia and become the TNT champion. I think they need to separate him and Ospreay for just a little bit and then find ways to use this history to be revisited later on down the road when the time comes. Yeah. Shout out to David Primero for the super chat. Mike retired USN dropping 200 Filipino pesos, I think. Is that what it is? Do you want my illustrious flying airport headbutt crash from the top rope? You advertise big WWE announcement and Hall of Fame changed location. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Is that a YouTube selling pitch? No, it's a big announcement because the Hall of Fame is no longer being associated with SmackDown. It's no longer being associated with the venue of SmackDown. It's finally separate entity, which is what it should have been. And that is a huge announcement because that was one of the biggest concerns and one of the biggest critiques that WWE was getting for the last few years is that the Hall of Fame is basically nothing. It's a nothing burger. So, yeah. But thank you for your super chat, buddy. Appreciate it. Brian McHattie dropping 5. He says, too many dream matches in AEW. Monet match was perfect example. Absolutely zero idea why Momo Watanabe was given an AEW title shot over an AEW talent.
Very true.
So this was like, for some people, I'm sure it's a dream match. To me, I don't look at it as a dream match. It was a good match. I don't have a problem with the match. I was obviously not
dream match. That's a little insane.
Yeah, I was not invested in this match going into the pay-per-view. Obviously,
it was actually one of the worst matches on the card.
I don't know if I would call it one of the worst matches on the card.
But I'm talking storyline wise, and like just the build to it. There was no build behind it.
Again, I mean, really, what I feel like I'm becoming repetitive with this, and I know Billy's going to echo this statement too. But it's just like in a world where you have Deonna Purrazzo and you have Taya Valkyrie and you have Camille, who I don't think is in AEW anymore. We'll probably talk about that in a little bit. Yep. But Megan Bain, you have just so many great people. There should be called, building storylines and letting those storylines breathe and building stars. And they don't do that. And yeah.
Agreed.
And I'll be honest. I said this before. I'm going to keep saying it again. I don't care about Mercedes and AEW. Never have. There's not until they build that massive feud, the thing that has a true long-term story with an actual build. To me, I feel like the TBS championship is on her to make her happy. I don't feel like the TBS championship is on her with a real vision. Right. Love Mercedes
and say that she has one.
Well, people hate on Mercedes because she's so good at her character. I love Mercedes. I think she is very, 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 very wonderful. I think she's incredibly talented. I understand that you're going to have people from Stardom and other companies get involved. But at the same time too, the truth is I want more from Mercedes and I want more from this women's division. There's too many great people in this company. And, the thing is, like P Rocks is mentioning in the chat, they're telling a story now with Mercedes and Billy Starks leading to Mercedes and Athena. Good. Like you should be doing that. Yeah. However, Athena's in ROH. So guess who gives a fuck about that? Only us hardcore fans. I only care about that match at All In because I'm a huge Athena fan. Right. But
I'll be honest, I'm not. I have no interest in it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Athena fan and that should be an all match at All In.
Athena, but I haven't seen her. I don't watch Ring of Honor.
Yeah. So the thing is, you have to put her on AEW television, and that's the thing, right? You got to do these things, but they're not doing it. So that's why it's just like, it's just misconstrued. I don't know what the fucking thing I'm trying to think of. I think it's misconstructed for sure. For sure. Shout out to Brian McHattie for the super chat. Appreciate you. Toledo Channel dropping 40 rupees. He goes, whose idea is it to interview Damaris Lewis? That's the girl from
Queen of the Ring.
If you guys saw this, you know exactly what we're talking about. They interview her ringside promoting Queen of the Ring, and she says the one thing that she learned about professional wrestlers is they know they win before everybody else.
And they aired that on TV.
That was live. That was a mistake. I'm not going to take a shot at her because she doesn't know any better.
I don't know obviously if I take a shot at AEW either.
Maybe having a meeting and talking about, hey, we're going to interview you.
Yes.
And we want to protect kayfabe. Right. She broke kayfabe. Mm-hmm. She deactivated her social media because people are going crazy about it.
Did she really?
She did. I feel bad because this is a poor representation of wrestling fans. Mm-hmm. She exposed kayfabe, but guess what, guys? We already knew.
We knew that.
We knew this. Fans. So was it a good look? No. Does it impact AEW? No. Does it reflect poorly on AEW?
And does it ultimately affect wrestling?
No. But I think it just would have been good for somebody to say, hey, when we interview you, this is what you say. Just give her a little response.
Right. Yeah.
Just maybe because this could have been prevented is my point. Yes. But I'm not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna sit here and bash AEW or bash her for it. I think it was silly. I think it looks bad, but I don't think it hurts anybody. I just think it's weird because it's the notion of like sitting there on live TV basically saying, hey guys, the pay-per-view you just spent money on is fake.
They knew everything that was happening.
Yeah, so that's the only thing. But here's the thing, right? Like, had they done it like on a post-show media scrum,
or a pre-show,
like pre-show, like that would have been fine. But because it took place during the actual pay-per-view, like I think almost that like was
a smack in the face.
Yeah. Like when the Rock and Triple H and all these people go on the post shows conferences, just like AEW, you kind of break kayfabe, which is fine because that's not a big deal. It's not the pay-per-view. It's a media scrum. That's fine. I don't get mad about
this in the middle of when people are working.
Yeah, I just think the issue is she didn't know any better, and I think AEW didn't know any better to tell her beforehand, hey, we're going to ask you a quick question or whatever, and then just say this.
Yeah.
Hey, we like to protect. There's a thing called kayfabe. We like to protect it,
But again, I agree with you. I just think it was shitty timing.
Very shitty timing.
Yeah. But very shitty on the wrestling fans too. I mean, she didn't know any better. It's not her fault.
That's who I actually have an issue with. The wrestling fans, poor representation, bro. This is like, this is a celebrity. This is an actress. This is somebody who did a thing where she got to represent professional wrestling in Hollywood, which, by the way, professional wrestling has never been looked at as a big deal in Hollywood.
And now, they don't get respect. All of a sudden, over the last couple of years, it's they're telling important stories in these movies.
Between heels on Netflix or whatever, Stars or whatever it's on, Von Erichs and Queen of the Ring. Like, it's pretty cool to actually have some wrestling based shows or movies. So the thing is, like, again, I'm not going to say it's not a big deal that she said it. It is a big deal that she said it because it was during the pay-per-view. But to sit there and point fingers at AEW or to point fingers at her, I think this is where people are being a little too extra and a little too harsh.
I would agree.
It's a stupid mistake. It's a very stupid mistake, but it's
one of those situations where if you don't know better, what do you do?
What do you do? And maybe that's where AEW could have done a little bit better in saying
that's where they could have done better. But as fans, we can do better by just being like, just understanding. Like, we already knew the shit was scripted. We know that. Yeah. We know they have a plan. You know what I mean? So to go out and shit on somebody who doesn't have much recollection, of what pro wrestling even is.
Yeah.
Is just a very, very shitty thing. It's one of those situations where it's like, dude, not everybody lives in your bubble.
Yeah.
And it's okay that not everybody lives in your bubble. You correct them politely on if they are saying something about your bubble.
Well, the IWC loves gatekeeping professional wrestling for some reason.
It's so weird.
And so it becomes this thing where it's like, okay, well, Kat Denning talked about WWE, and then it's like, oh, well, go watch AEW. And then it's like, you drive people away, bro. Don't drive people away. Hey, you could be respectful and say, hey, you probably shouldn't have said that in wrestling. We like to protect this thing. It's called kayfabe. Yeah. Everybody understands what you're saying is true, but we like to sell the idea that it's not, because for the 3 hours that you watch a show, you just want to believe that it's not scripted. You want to enjoy
and you have to imagine that she's a person that if you explain that to her well enough, she's going to understand. She's a fucking actress.
Yeah, of course.
Same thing.
It's not that big of a deal, though. I think it's a bigger deal that the wrestling fans really tried to. They really just
tried to beat her down a little bit. Made her fucking.
It's crazy though, because the IWC is hypocrites. Because when somebody, when bullying happens and stuff like that, it becomes this thing of like, oh, you
bully anybody.
Yeah, and then they're the biggest bullies of them all. So
exactly.
Toledo Channel follows up with that super chat for 200 rupees. I believe Swerve is the best opponent for Mox. Mox, Pac, and Cesaro are a victim of Vince's poor booking. When they got power, it's killing a company. Swerve, who was made relevant by AEW, needs to show loyalty. Yes, 100%. And I think one of the best things about this was when we talked about it in the past on live shows, we talked about Swerve. Mm-hmm. We talked about Swerve. And Swerve is one of those guys where, hey, like, it is very clear you're very happy in this company. I think he had a rough start in AEW. Eventually, it turned out to be once he got away from Parker, Boudreaux, and everybody, and he kind of did his thing with Prince Nana, it was very clear that he was truly an AEW guy. Great. What have I been saying? It's for somebody to beat Mox and the Death Riders to kill the storyline. There needs to be a significant babyface who represents AEW and makes the save. So what I would do here is, with Swerve being the number one contender, go after Mox.
Still having Prince Nana.
And what I would say is, if I'm AEW, I'm going to be very, very, very honest here. If I'm AEW, Swerve wins at Double or Nothing. He beats Moxley. Death Rider storyline goes away. You build Swerve and Hangman again for All In.
Do that All In. Yep.
And what I would do at All In is actually do a double turn. I would actually have Hangman officially go babyface, like 1,000%, and Swerve beating heel after. And Hangman should beat Swerve at All In. That would be my main event. And that, I'm telling you guys right now, if you want to hear Ango sing a different tune about AEW, if you guys genuinely want to see me invested in AEW, then that's what I would do. Phil just mentioned in the chat too. He says, isn't it Dynasty first, then Double or Nothing?
Yes,
but I wouldn't do Swerve versus Hangman. Moxley. I don't want that at Dynasty.
You should have like Cesaro or Pac or something like that at Dynasty between Swerve.
What I would do is actually, in the meantime, is I would have an NJPW star versus Jon Moxley at Dynasty.
Yeah.
I would actually have somebody from outside feud with Jon Moxley. And the reason for that is because as much as I want the Death Rider storyline to end, I need them to now really, really build this with more layers and more effort. And you can't do it at Dynasty. So I would say do it for Double or Nothing. Yep. But in the meantime, this is where the Death Rider storyline could actually pick up.
Yes,
because having the baby face.
They can fix it.
The solution was they need a top baby face who people could get behind that bleeds AEW going on that chase. So this would be the way to do it.
That top baby face that's willing to bleed AEW.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So I know it sounds crazy that I'm saying that, but I do agree that Double or Nothing is when it should happen.
Yeah.
And then at All In, Swerve and Hangman again. You revisit that. And then what's really cool is after Hangman wins the belt, now you revisit Hangman and MJF.
I'm here to tell you guys right now, I am a believer that if AEW pulls their cards correctly and does this the right way, that people will be singing a much different tune about their show. Oh, he sneezed. Bless you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I had to mute myself. But no, it's true. Like you could tell that, and I've said this in the last 4 episodes. I'm not prioritizing watching it live, TV. I'm not. Mm-hmm. But they have a chance to get me back. It's just how they follow up. Yep. This week, Wednesday, I will watch live.
Yep, because it's wanting to know the follow up.
Because I want to know the follow up. Yep. However, that's an opportunity, but it doesn't mean I'm going to prioritize live every time. But Hangman, Swerve, All In next year should be the move.
I agree.
Or not next year, this year, All In.
Right.
Yeah.
In July, baby, in Texas.
Shout out to Tolino Channel for the super chats. Ilias dropping 45 Danish krones. He says, can we talk about
what that was?
Yeah. World currency, baby. I know it all. Kind of. Sort of.
Apparently, I'm a dummy.
Oh, it's okay. He says, can we talk about what happened to our beloved AEW tag team division? The tag team division is so dead now. Yeah, the match I didn't care about was the Hurt Syndicate versus the Outrunners. Right. I'm sorry. This is the criticism I have for AEW and WWE. They show signs of life and then they're not fully committed to it. So it's like dating a girl who like you love her, she loves you. Then it gets really rocky. She stops loving you. You stop loving her. Then you kind of fall back in love again, and it's toxic now. And that's the tag team divisions for both wrestling companies. They show a little bit of love for a little bit, and then they kind of go away from it. But this is what happens when you don't make it a commitment every single week to build it up properly.
I've seen somebody say that the Bucks were coming back soon, and I just want to say, like, I don't even know if that could save it right now.
It's not going to be the Bucks. It's not going to be one specific tag team, just like it's not with WWE. It's got to be
consistently booked right.
Yeah, it's a division. You got to build up actual challengers and stuff like that. And if there's one thing I would say, though, is like you have Maximum Male Models, right? MXM. You have the Outrunners. You have the Young Bucks. You have Private Party. You have different tag teams that are there, but they should be prominently on TV doing tag team matches. Till we get that, it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ilias, for the super chat. On Your Marks, Lou has become a member. Shout out to Lou. He has joined the job squad. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Shout out, Lou.
In digital films, dropping $13.99 Canadian dollars. AEW needs a long-term story like the Bloodline, with MJF as a dominant champion of fine titles, leading to a babyface like Daniel Garcia dethroning him with stables and subplots built in. So the thing is, they don't. I'm going to disagree.
Yeah,
I agree with the sentiment. Like they need that long-term story. Where I disagree is with MJF and Daniel Garcia, because it's not about the individuals, right? It does matter about the individuals to a certain extent.
Well, look at what they just did with Swerve last night, right?
Yeah.
What they did with Swerve last night is a perfect example of, as long as you just have somebody who bleeds what you're doing,
yes,
people are going to get behind you. It doesn't matter the name.
Yes, exactly.
You need the good heel and you need the great baby.
Yes. You need it.
You need the hero and the villain.
You know, we could talk about WWE all day, but look at Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry was a perfect example for TNA, you know, and it's like TNA actually kind of struck it right at the right time. Like, I was nervous that they were going to prolong it even more, but they were like, no, we understand. Like, it's time for Joe Hendry to win. And obviously TNA is smaller than AEW, but there was a lot of people who don't watch TNA, who don't even know TNA, that were starting to talk about TNA because Joe Hendry being viral. So that is something to keep in mind for sure, without a doubt. But it's how professional wrestling works. You got to have that big. The reason why the Death Rider storyline has stunk so much was because they haven't had that top baby face guy that bleeds AEW, like, going after the title. So that's where now you could rectify that with Swerve winning. However, the only way that it's going to work is if you really, really have the Death Riders beat down Swerve. You got to get to the point where Swerve actually gets beaten down. And if you want, you have him written off of Dynasty. You have Swerve miss Dynasty. Write him off, beat his ass to the point where it's like, okay, Swerve is screwed. Swerve will redeem himself and save the company at Double or Nothing, but he misses Dynasty. Now imagine.
Can I be honest? My only scary portion of this, right? Because I hear what you're saying, is that they find a way to utilize Darby Allin in the situation.
No.
That's what scares me.
We talked about it before too. Yeah.
Knowing the past between Swerve and Darby Allin, I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to do that at All In and let Darby win the title.
Yeah, no. If they do that, that's the biggest blunder Tony Khan will ever have.
Yes. That is the only worry that I have.
Biggest blunder, because who is showing up when facing adversity all the time? Cody Rhodes. So if you want, the reason why the Cody Rhodes thing worked was not because Cody Rhodes is great. He is, but it was because it was a very, very good babyface. Everybody was behind. Yeah. And the thing is, he was there every week showing up and facing adversity. And then the thing is, like, every time he was getting closer and closer to his goal, somebody was there to screw him over. So the thing is, with Darby Allin, where has he been? I know they want that for Darby, but the reality is the Death Rider storyline isn't good enough to carry. Like, the Bloodline storyline was good enough to carry. The Death Rider thing is obviously not the case.
Right.
So
exactly. There's been too much bad blemish behind it that it's hard to even think that, like, it could even stretch that far.
Yeah. So they have to pivot. And the way you do it is now you have the opportunity to do it Memorial Day weekend with Swerve and Death Riders, because you can't just click reset. And we'll talk about the World Championship match because it was an absolute joke. We're just getting through the super chats. But shout out to Indigital Films for the super chat. On your marks, Lou dropping a 50 banger. He says AEW has some of the biggest main event talents, yet they aren't the main eventers. Seen a bunch of 50-year-old plus former WWE guys always being pushed as their top talents isn't working. That said, Tony Mariah should have been the main. Quite frankly, after seeing how they ended it with the end and everything like that, that finish and everything,
that would have been a great way to end the show.
That would have been a perfect way to end the show.
Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher would have been a great way to end the show. I mean, there were matches, like, even knowing that, like, Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher were the co-main prior to Cope and Mox.
Yeah,
it's insane to, like, they were never going to follow that up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the reality is the main event sucked. And I knew it was going to suck. And the one thing they did really well was having Christian cash in the middle of the match, making it a triple threat match. I thought that was smart. The reason why I thought I thought that was smart was because of the fact that, like, you do got to get away from the cash in thing. I thought that was better than what we were talking about with, like, maybe Jay White, cashing in or something, because those things were things that we were thinking immediately of them. They have to pivot from Death Riders.
Right.
So I did like the fact that Christian cashed in the middle of the match.
Now, I will say the ending, like the actual ending, is what saved that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But Copeland, and I'm sorry, I love Copeland. I've been saying this forever. He's the guy that made me a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
But I'm not a big believer in him in AEW. I don't think what he's doing in AEW is cool. I don't think he was the guy to be representing AEW. He doesn't know what AEW is all about. He doesn't represent AEW. He's a lifelong WWE guy.
Yeah. And I get it, wanting to go sprint or spread your horizon a little bit. I understand that. But going in there and trying to lead the charge, I don't know if I believe you when you're leading the charge, because I know you led the charge somewhere else.
Exactly. And it would have been different if Swerve was given that role in WWE. It would have been different if Darby Allin was given that role, or
Right.
MJF, right? But no, Adam Copeland led it for the other company. So even when he used to make his little hoorah speeches for AEW, it's like nobody cares, bro, because you don't really know what that life is all about.
You weren't actually struggling over there.
Exactly. But I do agree, honestly, Lou, I do agree. I think there is a issue here with who they've been pushing. I think there's an issue most definitely with the main event match itself was very, very problematic.
Now, I will say this. I'm sorry to cut you off, but the idea that like Jay White hit Cope with the briefcase, like, okay, there is now pivot in wiggle room for Cope to go into what can be a good feud with Jay White. I actually don't hate that. I'm not mad at that.
If Jay White were to go over Cope, 100%.
Yes.
100%.
If Jay White goes over and it leads him into something bigger,
yeah,
count me in all
day.
No,
I'm for that. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like that. There's things in the match sucked, in my opinion.
Oh,
but there was things in the match that, like, okay, the Jay White pivot to Copeland is a perfect way to use Cope as a vet coming in, putting over I don't want to say an up and comer, but coming like helping somebody else elevate who needs it.
Yes,
there's benefit to that
elevation,
and then it doesn't require Jay White and Cope feuding for the world title.
Exactly, right? and you protected Cope there. Yeah,
for sure. And maybe they go with Christian versus Moxley at Dynasty. Because Swerve gets written off.
You can do that now, and then you can utilize like Samoa Joe and Hook and them beating up Christian along with the Death Riders or something like that. I don't know. But there's just numerous things that now you can do. So in some regard, they protected themselves to hopefully go into Wednesday, have a much different show than what it looked like, with the main event scene, I should say, the last 4 weeks, maybe even a couple months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have a chance now to fix your main event scene.
There is a chance to fix it, but it starts with Wednesday, and it starts with Swerve, cutting his promo, and the Death Rider is literally nearly killing him.
Yeah.
Write him off TV. And write him off TV. He's not medically cleared to compete.
Have him come back.
Come back with give him like a 2-week break. Come back with a neck brace and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And let him cut that promo where he says, okay, Moxley, hey, listen, I'm not going to be cleared in time for Dynasty, but doctors are giving me a sign that by Double or Nothing, I will be cleared. Now, I'm making it very clear, by Double or Nothing, whether doctors clear me or not, I am coming. I am saving AEW from you. And if you are not champion by then, even better. But if you are champion by Double or Nothing, I am coming for that world championship. And I'm making it very clear, you just messed with the wrong guy. And then what you do is, because Swerve gets written off, Swerve should find some allies, some guys who represent AEW very well. It could be a variety of people. It doesn't matter. But now you could start getting Yuta and Pac and Cesaro and those guys, Claudio, right? Like, you could start giving them some tag team matches, building it up. And then at Double or Nothing, that's when you go all in with the idea of Swerve, Swerve beating Moxley. And if you really want, honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to this. But if you really wanted, you could really commit to the Hurt Syndicate being baby faces.
Yeah.
Because the crowd loves them anyways. Swerve. And you could do something there with Swerve where they kind of back him up, And the reason why I say that, though, is because then you have an actual tag team championship feud between the Hurt Syndicate and Claudio and Yuta, or Claudio and Pac, or whatever you want to do, is my point. But yeah, shout out to On Your Marks, Lou, for the 50 banger. Appreciate you, bro. Brian McCaddy dropping $2. He says, Bookers living out Japanese cosplay fetishes. Brother, I appreciate your super chat, but I cannot address that. I think that's just a little too harsh.
Not the place.
Yeah, but I do appreciate the super chat. I do appreciate your support, brother. Thank you. Phil dropping $4.99. He says, if AEW has to flip-flop the AEW title to get things back on track, I'm okay with it. Mox to Swerve to Hangman, who wins it at All In, is the way to go. Yes. And like I've said before with WWE and other companies, it doesn't need to be long championship reigns. There just has to be a good storyline and a good reason to justify the change. Right now,
if we're going to flip-flop it, it's fine.
And if you're going to flip-flop it, just do it in a logical way where it's a good story. And I think I made a really good case for Swerve and Hangman at All In. And And when you have that kind of history, you do the double turn. Which is interesting because Swerve, why would he do the turn? Well, think about it this way. Swerve does the turn because he only wants to represent AEW because he's selfish and only wanted the belt. And that's why.
And not only that, but you have to take into their past. Again, you can kind of do the same thing that they just did with MJF there.
Yeah.
This guy burned my fucking house down. What do you mean? I hate this gentleman and you guys are cheering him?
Yeah.
Very simple.
Exactly. 100%. And I think there's just a lot of great ways to go around that. So we'll see how they do it, but it's obvious the Death Rider thing isn't working. If you want to get the Death Rider story on track just for a short period of time, this is the way to do it, in my opinion.
Yep.
100%. Thank you, Phil, for your super chat, brother. Appreciate it. On your marks, Lou dropping 10. He says Edge needs to lose a match. Jericho needs to be knocked down a peg. Mercedes needs to lose a match and stop being so cringe. AEW has become Make-A-Wish for former WWE talent. It is a concern, in my opinion, that a lot of former WWE talent have kind of been given these top spots without really preparing some of the other
up and coming talent.
Yeah, when they had the four pillars thing, it's like
that Double or Nothing match that should have been like such a stepping stone for that company.
Yeah, it's
I know not everybody's a fan of him, but I've been a huge Sammy Guevara fan for a very long time. And the fact that I don't see that guy on weekly TV, he's down in Ring of Honor, it rubs me the wrong way because that guy, he had they did that 4 pillars match between Sammy, Darby, Jack, and MJF. It's like, man, like we really could have done something with that, but instead we still chose to go the route just for popularity's sake. Is really all it's for. It's a popularity game.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like you bringing up Sammy Guevara, but like a really good thing to mention here is like there has to be something said about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a guy that's like an AEW OG, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Sammy's going for the world championship, but like you have these AEW OGs. Mm-hmm. Why isn't there somewhat of an emphasis on them? Right. And like you kind of have to look at this from the perspective of like TNA. TNA suffered the same fate where a lot of their OGs were pushed aside because of WWE stars coming in and Hogan and Bischoff and things like that. Mm-hmm. There was a time where like, it really hurt TNA. And I do think to a certain extent, man, like AEW kind of lost that flavor of where.
Well, because you're supposed to be your own thing. And the problem is we know where these people come from. We know what they did elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's fine if you want to mix them in. I'm not mad at that. If you want to incorporate them in your show and make them a big deal, kind of like we talked about a minute ago with Cope and Jay White, to elevate Jay White in some degree, I don't hate that. I'm not mad at that. But your ultimate goal should be to, and again, if you want to have it happen, if Cope logically should go win the AEW World Champion, if you want to logically do it, and maybe you told me a different story, maybe I'd be singing a different place. Maybe this would be a much different discussion. But instead, where we are and where we're lying is it wasn't a good storyline. It didn't sell you. Cope looked really bad throughout this whole thing, and they tried to make him look good. Again, great by AEW by ultimately pivoting to Swerve right away. I love that. But again, you've just done these bad things with, again, like a Mercedes or a Cope, to where you're just giving them and handing them these things rather than working for it when you have guys who have been, dude, in some regards, almost dying for your company.
Yeah.
Really going to hell's bound. Like Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay, they should be a part of that main event scene. I get it, but even like Okada is a very perfect example of somebody who should be moving along the card very quickly, especially with the title that he has. It was supposed to be a big deal. Again, this is just a problem that AEW has had lingering throughout the years, and finally it's become relevant to where people are talking about it.
Yeah.
And the thing is now you're in a position you can get away from it. we got to do something with Mercedes. I've been saying that. Everybody knew she was going to win the match against Momo Watanabe. We all knew that. Now you have to do something different with her. You need to drop those 3 belts that she has. If you want to leave her the TBS champion, sure. Dude, I think she looks goofy walking around with 5 championships or 4 or whatever the number is. It looks goofy.
I mean, how it looks, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think for me, like my really big thing that like I noticed with certain stories, it's like, what are you doing to progress other people, to elevate other people? I don't see that on this show. I don't see that across the board. Right. And it doesn't have to be from every single match, you know what I mean? But like Konosuke losing to Kenny is fine because Konosuke he'll be fine, right? But like, for example, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's just certain things that like they're not progressing people at the rate that they once were. Yeah. And that's kind of how I look at it, unfortunately. And it's just really sad, you know.
For sure. It's
really sad. Shout out to Lou for the super chat. One more super chat. Toledo Channel says, hey, Ango, Billy, why don't you both start your star rating system and criteria? Fed up of 5-star ratings. I'm not. For now, I don't have any interest in that. Wow. Because I don't think that matters, and I think the rating system is dumb. I think wrestlers and promoters should focus on building the best possible stories and the best possible matches.
About them ratings.
Yeah. Dave Meltzer could give somebody a 5-star match, but maybe the moment in the match is, you know, he could give them a 2 stars, but maybe the match makes it the biggest storyline in the world. So that's why I don't really like star ratings and stuff like that. But who knows? Maybe one day if there's a way to do it for fun.
Yeah, maybe one day we could pop out and give our own little rating.
Yeah, we'll see. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are over an hour and a half. Shout out to Billy for joining us on his birthday. If you guys haven't subscribed to Billy, make sure you guys do click subscribe. He's been dropping tons of content lately. YouTube.com/@BillyTKO. If you guys aren't subscribed to The Angle Show, make sure you guys click subscribe. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, everybody, for the super chats. You guys absolutely dominated today. Despite X being down and we couldn't stream on X, I just appreciate everybody coming through. And the watch time and everything is great. So we appreciate you guys. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Raw. There is a lot of stuff that we will be discussing. Again, AEW Revolution, surprisingly getting great reviews from your boy Ango. Yeah. Not so much shocked by Billy because all of a sudden he's just a huge AEW fan.
Tune into my live stream Wednesday nights.
Yeah, I'm not going to be part of that, but you guys should definitely watch Billy. Me. Yeah, you guys should definitely be part of that. I'll try to come around in the chat as well, if possible. It's going to be a very, very, very busy week on the channel and a very busy weekend for your boy. Yep. And we're going to keep the show going. So tomorrow back at 12 p.m., make sure you guys click subscribe. Hopefully Twitter is back by then so we could go live there as well. And then again, just don't forget to subscribe to Billy. And with that being said, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you guys next time.